Ovulation and menstrual cycle. What is ovulation? At puberty, some follicles in the ovaries start to develop. They grow in size and move towards the surface of the ovary. Usually, only one follicle becomes fully mature at a time. It bursts to release an ovum into the funnel of the oviduct, and this process is called ovulation. Under the action of sex hormones, the uterine lining builds up and breaks down periodically to prepare for receiving an embryo. This cyclic change of uterine lining is called the menstrual cycle. The menstrual cycle lasts about 28 days. What is menstrual cycle? The uterine lining of a female is richly supplied with glands, blood vessels, and soft tissues. Under the action of sex hormones, the uterine lining builds up and breaks down periodically to prepare for receiving an embryo. This cyclic change of uterine lining is called the menstrual cycle. The menstrual cycle lasts about 28 days. Details of the cycle are shown here. During day 1 to 5, if fertilization does not occur, the yellow body degenerates about 14 days after ovulation. The thickened uterine lining breaks down. The uterine lining, including some blood, and the unfertilized ovum then discharge through the vagina. This process is called menstruation. It lasts about 5 days. During day 5 to 14, after menstruation, some follicles in the ovary start to develop. The thickness of the uterine lining and the blood supply increase again to prepare for receiving an embryo. At day 14, ovulation occurs. During day 14 to 28, the uterine lining continues to thicken and becomes very thick. It is ready to receive an embryo. If fertilization occurs and the female becomes pregnant, the degeneration of the yellow body is delayed. The uterine lining does not break down and its thickness increases further. Menstruation does not occur until after the baby is born. The thickness of the uterine lining changes in relation to the cyclic events occurring in the ovary. The first menstruation occurs at puberty. The menstrual cycle repeats until about the age of 50, when a female reaches menopause. At menopause, ovulation and menstruation becomes less regular and gradually stop. Then the female can no longer become pregnant. Fertilization. In humans, fertilization occurs inside the female reproductive tract. Sperms, therefore, must be transferred from the male body into the female body for fertilization to occur. How are sperms transferred into the female body? It is by sexual intercourse, in which biologically it is known as copulation or mating. It brings the male and the female together so that semen containing sperms can be introduced into the female body. When a male is sexually excited during copulation, the erectile tissue of the penis is filled rapidly with more blood. The normal soft penis becomes hard and erect. The penis is then inserted into the vagina of the female. The muscles of the epididymis and the vas deferens contract to eject semen into the vagina. The ejection of semen through the penis is called ejaculation. How does fertilization occur? After semen is ejaculated into the vagina, the sperms swim through the cervix, up the uterus, and heads towards the upper parts of the oviducts, the site of fertilization. Their movement is also helped by the peristaltic contraction of the muscular wall of the uterus and oviducts. Of the 200 to 500 million sperms in an ejaculation, only several thousand reach the oviducts. The rest die on the way due to different reasons. Some sperms are trapped by the mucus or killed by the acidity of the vagina. The body temperature of the female is too high for the sperms. Some sperms are defective or immobile. If the sperms meet an ovum in the oviduct, they try to penetrate the ovum. They release enzymes from the acrosomes to digest the jelly coat of the ovum. When the head of one of the sperms passes through the cell membrane and enters the cytoplasm, the jelly coat changes to prevent the entry of other sperms. The nucleus of the sperm then fuses with the nucleus of the ovum. This process is called fertilization. The fertilized ovum is called a zygote. Sperms can remain alive in the female reproductive tract for about 3 days. Those that do not fertilize the ovum will eventually die. If the ovum is not fertilized by a sperm within about 24 hours after ovulation, the ovum will also die. Development of the embryo and fetus. Implantation. After fertilization, the zygote is transported down the oviduct to the uterus. During the journey, it divides repeatedly by mitotic cell division to form a ball of cells called an embryo. After reaching the uterus, the embryo embeds itself into the thickened uterine lining, and this process is called implantation. It occurs about 7 days after fertilization and marks the beginning of pregnancy. Formation of the amnion. After implantation, the embryo continues to develop, and some of its cells form a membrane called the amnion. The amnion encloses the embryo and secretes amniotic fluid, which fills the cavity between the amnion and the embryo. The amniotic fluid has the following functions. First, it serves as a cushion to protect the embryo from mechanical injury. Second, it provides a stable environment, for example, a constant temperature for development of the embryo. Third, it prevents the embryo from desiccation. Fourth, it allows the embryo to move around easily. Finally, it lubricates the vagina during childbirth. Formation of the placenta. Around the 3rd week, the embryo develops finger-like villi that grow into the uterine lining. These embryonic villi, together with some maternal uterine tissue, make up a temporary disc-shaped organ called the placenta. The placenta is connected to the abdomen of the embryo by the umbilical cord. The cord contains 2 umbilical arteries, which carry deoxygenated blood from the embryo to the placenta, and an umbilical vein which carries oxygenated blood from the placenta to the embryo. Inside the embryonic villi of the placenta are the embryo's capillaries. The villi are extended into the maternal blood space within the uterine lining. The embryo's blood and the maternal blood are close to each other but do not mix. They are separated first, to prevent the high blood pressure of the mother from damaging the blood vessels of the embryo. Second, to avoid problems brought by any blood group's incompatibility between the embryo and the mother. The placenta allows the exchange of materials between the embryo and the mother. Nutrients, oxygen, and antibodies diffuse into the embryo's blood from the maternal blood. Carbon dioxide and other metabolic wastes, such as urea, diffuses into the opposite direction. The placenta has a special structure. It is adapted to the exchange of materials by having the presence of embryonic villi greatly increases the surface area for the exchange of materials, and the wall of the embryo's capillaries and the embryonic villi are very thin. This provides a short distance for the diffusion of materials. There are a lot of blood vessels which can carry materials away rapidly. Thus, a steep concentration gradient of materials between the embryo's blood and the maternal blood is maintained. The placenta also acts as a barrier to harmful substances. Most bacteria cannot pass into the embryo. However, viruses such as the German measles virus and the human immunodeficiency virus, HIV, nicotine and carbon monoxide from cigarette smoke, alcohol, and many drugs can cross the placenta and harm the embryo. Moreover, the placenta secretes hormones to maintain the thickness of the uterine lining. This is important for development of the embryo. This is the end of the video. Thank you for watching. Please give us a like and subscribe to our channel. Click on the tab to watch the next part of the video series.